Stop what you're doing, have a listen. If you would like to halve your risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, dementia, reduce your risk of depression, anxiety, and reduce your risk of premature death by 20 to 30%, then you need to listen to this podcast. Welcome back to the Storm Fitness Academy podcast. And in today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the teachings from a recent cardiovascular training workshop that I taught to my Storm Fitness Academy community. So let's begin. So let's begin with the benefits of cardiovascular training. So obviously, I've already given you a little teaser at the start there with all the different conditions, medical conditions that we can reduce the risk of. There's numerous amounts of data that suggests that exercise, cardiovascular exercise, improves not just your longevity, which is how long you're living on the planet for, but also your health span. So, there's no point living to 100 if you're in agony and you've got no quality of life. But if you live to 100 and you've got a great quality of life and really good, healthy well-being, then that's what we're after, isn't it? And from the mental health side of fitness and health, it's huge. So when we exercise, particularly if we challenge ourselves, we release endorphins. So if I go for a nice easy jog, not particularly hard, probably not going to really maximize the endorphin release, but I'm going to get some other hormones which I talk about. But if I just throw in the occasional sprint to a lamppost, or if I get to a hill and I power walk up the hill, anything that challenges me or I get a bit of discomfort, I'm going to get those endorphins. And the lovely thing about endorphins is as soon as we stop exercising, we still have those endorphins in our blood. So we will feel euphoric. We get this little, I feel good, nice little buzz about us. Now, the other thing I love about cardiovascular training is that when we're doing it, we get a release of other hormones as well, like dopamine, serotonin. And if we're part of a running community, then we can get oxytocin. So that feeling of belonging and feeling like you're loved and you're giving love. And with the workshop that I taught last week, we had this lovely little group. Everyone was getting on really well. Everyone's being so supportive and motivational towards one another. We were having loads of banter. And we would have got a nice little release of oxytocin from that. So that with the serotonin, the dopamine, the endorphins, it's a cocktail of happy hormones. So far better to get your highs from natural sources. Over time, when we do cardiovascular training, then we get numerous adaptations. So if I am training a client and when they come to me, they're quite sedentary, they're not doing very much, but they train, say, 3 times a week with me, over time, there's going to be some internal adaptations going on. Now, one of the great internal adaptations that we have with aerobic training, endurance training, cardiovascular training, whatever you want to call it, is we actually get a strengthening and growth of the left ventricle. So with the heart, there's one particular chamber that's responsible for pushing blood around the entire body. And when we do our cardio, that side gets stronger and thicker. Now, you might be thinking, well, so don't know if I necessarily need that or want that. But the great thing about that is when that side gets thicker and stronger, it can pump more blood around the body with each contraction. And in that blood, we've got nutrients and we've got oxygen. So we're pushing all this good stuff around your body more easily. And that means it doesn't have to pump as many times. So you might have a friend or you might know somebody that's a really good endurance athlete and they've got a very low resting heart rate. That is because they've basically got a hench heart. That's a really good benefit of that. People that are very sedentary, deconditioned, typically have higher resting heart rates. So their heart's got to beat more times to get all the nutrients and all the oxygen around the body. So that's one of those adaptations. Now, the other thing is we also get better at bringing oxygen in and getting carbon dioxide out. So when you are exercising, whether it's just doing normal stuff like, walking up a hill, you're going to find that easier because when you're breathing in your air, you're able to get more oxygen out of the air and get more carbon dioxide out of your body to cope with the demands of the hill. So you just start to find walking up hills a lot easier. So you've got lots of things going on. You get better at this gaseous exchange, we call that. You get a stronger heart, pumping more blood around the body. You get more flexible blood vessels as well. You can also start to reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes by improving your insulin sensitivity, which basically means when you increase your blood sugars and you release insulin, the blood sugar gets into the muscle cell and gets metabolized for energy. When we're insulin resistant, these cells don't respond to insulin and the blood glucose doesn't get into the cell and it remains in the blood, which is not good for your arteries and leads to fat storage and fatigue and lethargy, etc. Lots of other things that we don't want. What we want to do is get that glucose into the cell, turn it into energy so that we can exercise and we avoid unnecessary fat storage. Now, depending on what type of cardio you're doing, if you're doing anything weight bearing like walking, running, then obviously that's going to be great for musculoskeletal health as well. Very good for your bones, avoiding osteoporosis, etc. Essentially, it's making you live longer with a better quality of life and a better self-worth, better self-esteem because you know that you're fit and you're healthy. Now, a question I get asked all the time when I'm talking to the general public, but it can often be one of the first questions I get from a student, is how much exercise should people actually be doing? There are guidelines for this, and I think they're pretty sound guidelines actually. So they are based on research of what is the minimum dose required to get the maximum benefit. So we don't necessarily want to do more than you need to do. We certainly don't want to do so much that it becomes detrimental to our health rather than beneficial. So the government guidelines are 150 minutes of moderate physical activity per week or 75 minutes of vigorous physical activity per week. Moderate is going to be where you feel like you're exercising but you can maintain a conversation. So if you're brisk walking to work with a friend, you could chat to them and it's reasonably pleasant. Now, vigorous, I would associate to more competitive sports. So you might be running around on a tennis court, running around on a football pitch, jogging or running, swimming hard or biking quite hard. So it's something where you definitely feel like you're exercising. It's challenging and conversation becomes quite difficult. You can only get a few words out. Now, 1 minute of vigorous is equivalent to 2 minutes of moderate. So aiming towards those guidelines is a really good starting place. So if you're somebody that doesn't really do anything, then starting with 5 minutes is obviously going to be better than nothing and just progressing from there. So that's what you're going to be aiming for. Now, there is a range. So, you don't get to 150 minutes and go, right, that's me done. If you want to, you can obviously do more than that. The range goes from 150 to 300. It is generalized data. So somebody might argue I do much better on more than that. That's fine. That's okay. I myself do more than 300 minutes of moderate exercise per week and I feel good. But that's a range. So when you're working with clients and you're thinking, where do you want to start? Well, if you're training them 3 times a week, it'd be great if you could get 3 lots of vigorous in there of 25 minutes, and that will be the 75 minutes ticked off. Or if you know that they like to go for a long walk at the weekends with the family and the kids, you can take an hour of that off and then whatever you got left. So it doesn't have to be quite as calculated or strategic as I'm making it sound, but it just gives you an idea. So that's a great target. Use those guidelines to work out where is my client in relation to where they ideally should be. Because when they meet those guidelines, if you remember from the start of this podcast, half your risk of dementia, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, the biggest killers, and various cancers, by the way. So these are the biggest killers in the UK. Just by meeting those guidelines, you halve your risk of the biggest killers in the UK. Last time I checked, 28% of men will die from heart disease. 17% of women will die from heart disease. So that's just those two. So just by becoming active, you reduce that risk. Okay, so on this particular workshop, we went through how to coach clients on various different cardiovascular machines, and then we got into how to plan and program some real juicy training methods and techniques. So just to give a bit of an overview, when it comes to endurance performance, which is essentially cardiovascular fitness, we really look at three things. So we look at building somebody's VO₂ max, which is your ability to get oxygen out of the air that you're breathing in. We look at your lactate threshold, which is basically how hard can you work until lactate floods your muscles and causes you to slow down. And we look at movement economy. So movement economy is made up of several things. Your technique, are you doing things with correct posture, using your levers in the right way? Have you got the right body composition, low body fat percentage, healthy lean muscle mass? Are you strong enough to actually produce enough force to do the movements? So we look at those three things: VO₂ max, lactate threshold, and movement economy. Selecting the best training techniques and training systems is going to be the difference between plateauing of your cardio or taking your cardio to the next level. So this is really important for my PTs to understand this, because if they're training a client for a long time, they've got great adherence, the client keeps coming back, at some point that client is going to want to take things to the next level. No one wants to just stay as they are. Everyone wants to get better and better. So we need these more advanced training techniques and methods to take them to that next level. So we looked at intervals. So we looked at three different types of intervals. We looked at Fartlek training. We looked at threshold training. And we looked at using actually body weight and minimal equipment for training cardio. So I'm going to go through each of those with you in today's episode. Threshold training. Now, this could be the missing piece in your cardiovascular training. Now, I remember chatting to a guy years ago back at the gym that I worked at, and he was always running marathons, always doing marathons, half marathons, and he had another marathon coming up, and I said, "Are you training for the marathon?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Oh, are you going for a particular time?" And he said, "I'm still trying to do it in under 4 hours." And at the time I was quite shocked, because this guy was an avid marathon runner. So I thought, doing it for as long as he has, I would have thought he would have got to under 4 hours. He was in good shape, good physical condition. He had the right body composition. And I had a little chat with him about what he was doing for his training. And all he'd been doing was just going for runs. Now, probably thinking, yeah, if he's doing his running training, isn't that what he should be doing, going for runs? Yes, he should be doing running, but you can't just keep going for steady state runs, because one of the things that makes you faster is practicing going faster. So we've all got like a race pace, a rough pace that we can consistently hold. And when you go for a run, you will do it at a pace that feels comfortable, that you can maintain for that distance. If you want to get quicker, you're going to have to spend time slightly above that. So lactate threshold training is where we work out roughly where our lactate threshold is. So where we start to build up so much lactic acid, we have to slow down and stop, and we practice spending time around the area. Sounds miserable, doesn't it? Well, it is really. It's what we call comfortably hard. It's where you can do it, you can keep going, you just don't want to. Work out 80 to 90% of your client's maximal heart rate. So you just take 220 minus their age. That will give you the predicted number for the maximal heart rate. If they already know their maximal heart rate from using their fitness tracker or whatever it is, then you can just take that number, probably be more helpful, more accurate. And then you times that by 0.9 and 0.8 to give you that, what we call zone 4. So that's roughly, for most people, around where their sort of lactate threshold is. So working between 80 and 90%, zone 4 of your maximal heart rate is going to be somewhere around that lactate threshold, where you're going to start to flood your muscles with lactic acid. So spending time at that is training your body to get better at clearing that. And what you'll find is, over time, you'll have to run at a faster pace or cycle at a faster pace to get up to that 80, 90%. So you get faster. So that's what my man from the gym back in the day should have been doing. He should have been doing some more lactate threshold stuff. Now, there's some other stuff he possibly should have been doing as well. Let's talk about next. Interval training. Interval training is probably the most potent form of training that you can do to boost your VO2 max. Now, it's not pleasant. If you're doing it properly, it's not pleasant. And this isn't for beginners. So if you listen to this, you're just starting out, don't worry about lactate threshold training. Don't worry about interval training yet. Just get comfortable doing kind of the easy, lighter stuff to begin with. This is next level stuff. So VO2 max is improved by spending time at very high intensity periods of cardio training, so 90 to 100%. And when we do that, the adaptation we get is our body gets better at getting oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. We get capillarization, we build more capillaries in the lungs and in the muscles, and we get more efficient. With VO2 max, if you look at the best athletes in the world, they all have crazy high numbers when it comes to VO2 max. I think the world record is a cross-country skier. Even if you look at team sports like Premiership football, the football players will be having a VO2 max in the 60s, whereas endurance cyclists and runners and what have you will be 70 plus, very high numbers. What we do as PTs when we want to take things to that next level is we can strategically plan in exercises that will boost VO2 max. One of the best ways to do that is to actually spend time in what we call the red zone. Red zone is working between 90 and 100% of your heart rate max. Now, this is not for the beginners. So if you're training a client that is already been consistently exercising for a long period of time, got a really good foundation, and you want to take them to that next level, then this type of thing is great for them. Pretty unpleasant, but one of the best drills you can do for this is something that we used to get the players to do. So I worked at Brighton Hove Albion Football Club back in 2006, I think it was, under Dean Wilkins, who was the manager at the time. And I was asked to find some sort of training drill that I could get the players to do when they were sitting on the bench. So in football, professional football players, when they have a game, that game actually acts as a training session. Now, if they've been benched for the entire game, they've missed out on a training session. So it's important that those players that are on the bench actually stay behind and do some training. So I was asked to source a drill that would replicate a game, and I found this particular drill, and it was being used at the time. I think Arsenal were using it. There was a couple of other Premiership teams that were using it, and I was like, right, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for Brighton Hove Albion. The research showed that if people did it twice a week for a number of weeks, it could increase their VO2 max by 10%. So it's quite big, quite significant. So it's 4 minutes at 95% of your maximum heart rate. So that's very high. It's pretty hideous. And then 3 minutes at 60 to 70%. And you repeat that 4 times. So in total, I think that's 28 minutes, isn't it? 28 minutes. So warm up at the start, cool down at the end. It's very tough. I've done it myself, and I managed to get a sub 20-minute 5K from practicing this. And the players would do it. They would do it as pre-season training. It's very good. It's very tough, though. Fartlek training. Now, Fartlek training is Swedish for speed play. So this is where you just mix things up. And what I typically used to do is if I took a PT client for a run and we were doing Fartlek training, I would actually write on my hand. Don't recommend you do that. Probably not a good idea to write on your hand, but that's what I did. I would write on my hand all their different training zones for their heart rate. So I'd write down the numbers that their heart rate should be for each of the different zones. And I would just cycle them up through the zones. So we'd start at zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, and then we would dip into zone 5 for a bit. I'd use my kind of observation skills to see how long can I keep them there for, and then we'd come back down again. So we were just playing around with the speed, running faster, running slower, but essentially I was giving them a little bit of taste of all different zones. Psychologically, it's a good way to build people up to the higher intensity levels of training because it builds their subjective tolerance to hard work, and it will, because you're spending some time in that red zone, it will improve their ability to get oxygen in and carbon dioxide out, so their VO2 max improves. Now, obviously, spending long periods of time in the red zone is minging. This doesn't feel good. It really doesn't. Spending 4 minutes, 5 minutes in the red zone, ugh, not a nice place to be. Now, if you can stomach it and you want that challenge, give it a go. Now, what you can do is just do more shorter, concise things. So HIIT training, you can do 60 seconds of a high intensity exercise, 30 seconds light intensity exercise, and repeat. So you're doing much shorter, brief periods of time. Now, there's loads of research out there that shows that it's still very effective for boosting VO2 max, very effective for improving insulin sensitivity, even fat loss. Is it as good as spending 4 minutes in the red zone? Well, probably not, no, but it's still effective. It's effective enough. So chucking in some intervals for your higher level clients where you're doing high intensity exercise broken up with brief rest periods is going to be great for them. Now, the other thing you can look at is Tabata training. So Tabata is 20 seconds of intense exercise, 10 seconds rest, times 8. So it lasts 4 minutes. Now, this is a lovely little training drill that PTs can use at the end of a training session, just as what we call a finisher. So clients finish the session, there's a bit of time, let's do some sort of exercise, whether it's shuttle runs, whether it's skipping, burpees, oh God, to finish them off. The beauty of Tabata training is it's research based. So there's actually a study done on this years ago. In fact, that's where the name comes from. It's named after the person that created this drill. And essentially what the research showed was that this particular protocol of 20 seconds flat out exercise, 10 seconds rest times 8 was as effective and a bit more on some of the other metrics that were measured as a 40-minute steady state group. It kind of opened the fitness industry's eyes to maybe less is more. It's not less though, is it? Because you've got to work your socks off doing it. It's very hard work. But it still does mean if you want to get good results, you can train harder instead of longer. It's a very time efficient training method or training technique. Okay, we covered loads of stuff in the workshops. There was more things we looked at, actually cardio circuit. So moving from one cardio based exercise to another. Instead of spending time in the red zone on just one bit of kit, doing 4 or 5 minutes on a bit of kit in the red zone, coming off, brief rest period, onto another bit of kit. So like treadmill, onto rower, onto assault bike, whatever it may be. So to conclude, if you want to take your clients' fitness levels or your own to the next level, then I would definitely familiarize yourself with heart rate training. So learn what your maximal heart rate is, or your client's maximal heart rate, how to calculate that if you need to estimate it, how to then turn those into heart rate zones, so percentages of your maximal heart rate. So you've got zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, work those out. And then when you do a training session, have a specific objective for it. So this session, this cardio session is going to work on my lactate threshold. This is going to work on boosting my VO2 max. This is just going to be a nice, comfortable recovery zone 2 training session. Very social, very enjoyable. There we go. Oh, I could talk about this stuff all day. Love it. Thanks for listening. If you have enjoyed that, if you want to learn more, well, actually, if you want to learn more, do you know what the best thing to do is? Join Storm Fitness Academy. Go onto our website, choose a course. If you're not sure which one to choose, fill out a contact form and you can have a chat with me. Enroll, and then you're going to learn loads of stuff. Come to workshop if you want to. You don't have to come to any workshops if you don't want. You can do it all online. We've got loads of great content. We have live webinars. But if you're still just interested in learning more, listening, watching, that's absolutely fine. Subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to us on YouTube, like, comment, all that stuff that's really helpful for me. That'd be lovely. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.